Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington with Dayton Reimer as always. We've got a bit of a new look today, so we're going to be testing some things out. So excited to see what we can do with this. Dayton, how's it going?
Hey, it's pretty good. It's back to freezing in Saskatoon here, so we're all bundling up and trying to stay warm. Lots of indoor recesses for teachers in schools.
Yeah, there has been here too. Which is sad. Kids like to go outside.
Yep.
But yeah, so unfortunately, Senators lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning 4-3. They made it really interesting at the end. It was a weird game from the officials, but in the end, it was an empty net goal that made the difference. It was a 3-2 game, and they pulled the goalie. That makes sense with like 3 minutes left. You can't knock anybody for that. And then they scored an empty net goal, made it 4-2, and then it took like 14 seconds for Drake Batherson to carry the puck up the ice and beat Vasilevsky. So made it interesting with 90 seconds to go. Did you get a chance to watch, or blackout still in your way?
Oh, yeah. You got to love them blackouts.
So the biggest thing for me in this game, I mean, you can't win them all. 5 games in a row. It was a great run, and Ottawa still sits in third place in the Atlantic. There's nothing to complain about with this loss. Except for Travis Hamonic was in the lineup and Nicholas Matenpalo was scratched. What do you think of that?
I'm not a huge fan, obviously. That Hamonic has not been great really since joining the Senators. He and Clevin had the highest on ice expected goals. Goals for? What? Really? That doesn't sound right. Among defensive pairings.
That doesn't sound right.
No. I got to be reading that wrong. No, it's just like he doesn't bring much to the lineup, and it seems that the Senators are worse when he's there. No, Matenpalo was fantastic. He's a great young player who has a lot of international experience and a lot of great defensive tendencies. And yeah, he's young and inexperienced, but he's been doing great. At least, really solid on the third pair. It seemed to work really well with Clevin. It just doesn't seem to work out with Hamonic. So I'm, not stoked he's back.
Yeah, and I mean, Matenpalo wasn't a game breaker by any means, but he was just reliable. You could trust him when he was on the ice, and you can't really say that about Hamonic. And I'm going to give credit, like, the coaching staff knows how to make the best roster. Travis Green is a whole lot smarter when it comes to hockey than I am. I just don't understand what's going into the decision. So a bit more transparency on that. I mean, yeah, he's a veteran leader. He's a good locker room guy, good to have around the team and all that. I completely understand. I don't know. I don't know what he brings to the lineup that Green and DJ Smith both loved so much. I mean, he's not an offensive threat. Every single slap shot goes 14 feet to the left of the goalie. Yeah, I don't know. I just think Matenpalo was the right decision, but I'm not going to fight tooth and nail over a sixth defenseman. Either one of them is fine.
Yeah, like I think the best thing you can say about tonight is that Hamonic played about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more. And when he was on the ice, the team didn't get scored on. That's the ceiling for Hamonic at this point of his career, is he doesn't play much and he's not a liability. And tonight he wasn't. He wasn't great by any means, but he wasn't a liability. So good on Green for getting the best out of him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't the reason that they lost. He's never going to be the reason the team loses. Sure, he might help them get there, but the difference between Hamonic and Matenpalo isn't going to win or lose a game in 99% of cases. So,
well, I did do a deep dive a little while ago on Hamonic and his impact with various other partners, and he actually did lose games for the Senators. He is a liability or at least has been in the past. And more often than not, he was a reason that the Senators would lose games. Tonight was not the case, and so maybe the rest of the team has improved defensively around him. I don't think Hamonic improved all that much in his departure. Usually players don't during an injury, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, another big takeaway from the game is Shane Pinto. He left the game and did not return with an apparent shoulder injury. Boy, are we back. So we just passed the 82 game mark of having Stützle, Norris, and Pinto all in the lineup, and Senators were on like 104 point pace in those 82 games. And now it's just Stützle left out of those three. So Josh Norris, we'll start with him. This was a few days ago. Not even sure what happened. It's listed as a mid-body injury. That doesn't happen very often. And it was just a weird collision at the blue line. It looked like he might have gotten hit in the balls or hit in the stomach, or I don't even know what it is. The team hasn't said anything. Said it's only going to be a few weeks, so it doesn't sound like it's going to be shoulder or season-ending shoulder surgery, which is the best news possible. But they also could just be telling us there's no telling what that injury was. Did you get to see the clip of it, or what do you think of Norris being out? Because he's been on fire lately, and especially on the penalty kill, he's been unreal. So,
yeah, I didn't see the clip, unfortunately. It kind of almost glossed over that he was injured. I just was checking some things the other day, and it's like, oh, he's back on the injured list. I wonder what happened. It didn't seem to make a lot of the regular news cycle that I follow. He has been doing well. He hasn't scored as many goals as I thought he would have in this last little stretch. He was doing fine in the goal. You were mentioning more so on the penalty kill, which I haven't seen as much. But it is unfortunate that he is back on the injured list. I am thankful that he is not getting another shoulder surgery, because how many times can you repair a shoulder before it just doesn't work anymore?
Yeah,
because I imagine
at least 3.
Yeah,
we're gonna find out with Josh Norris someday. Well, hopefully not, but
hopefully not. Yeah,
and then Shane Pinto again. There was nothing egregious. It was he kind of got hit into the boards and his arm rode up the glass and almost hyperextended up towards the roof of the building. It didn't it's not like he got hit really hard shoulder to shoulder and it might have popped something out. It just, I don't know. It was weird to see. And then he went off and it looked like he was holding his left shoulder. So terrible news on that front. He did not return to the game. There's no telling how long it's going to be. We're recording this immediately after the Tampa Bay game. So the first of 2 Tampa Bay games. So no update yet. I've got Twitter open waiting to see if Travis Green says anything about it. Odds are he's just going to say we'll reevaluate tomorrow or something like that. So before we move on from those injuries, I know we've talked about the trade deadline quite a bit, and obviously that's a huge thing coming up. Do you think that the Senators should now acquire a top 6 center or a middle 6 center at the very least? Assuming both, with Norris, it's a few weeks, so probably 3 weeks, which is about 12 games or so. And then Pinto, it didn't look good.
Yeah, hopefully with Pinto it is precautionary. It was a bad pull or sprain, and then a little bit of physio will help kind of work out that pain. It's tough to say when a guy doesn't return to the game. You never really know. It does make me think of the last Blades game I watched, where a guy got cross-checked in the back, went down on the ice, and was just writhing in pain. But he was back next period. So hopefully it's something like that. That's best case scenario. Do they need to make a trade? I think that is that's the big question. What do the Senators want to be this season? Do they want to be another team that grows and works towards getting a playoff spot and just narrowly misses because they had bad luck? Or do they want to be a playoff competitor? Because if they want to be a playoff competitor, they are starting to slip behind some of their competitors. They don't have the same kind of core as some of the other Atlantic teams, especially when it comes to your top end talent. Now, I'm not trying to disparage Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stützle or Jake Sanderson. Those guys are fantastic. Those are some of the best young players in the NHL. Who else is on their level? In the Senators, I would say nobody. No, it's those three guys. That's not enough to be a playoff threat.
Right, but everybody else in that kind of wild card race, and you can throw Atlantic 3 in there too, they're all in the same spot, I think. Like, you look at the Bruins, they only have Pasternak. Marchand isn't in that conversation anymore. So they only have one. We agree that Ottawa only has the two, Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk, on forwards at least. Drake Batherson and Josh Norris are complementary pieces. They're good complementary pieces, but they're not those
secondary scorers, I'd say.
Yeah. But then you look at Tampa Bay. They've got three. I mean, one is Nikita Kucherov, so he counts for like 3 or 4. But you got Kucherov, Point, and Gensel. Outside of that, they're fairly thin. They figure out a way to make it work and whatnot. Detroit, I mean, Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko aren't what they once were. You got Alex DeBrincat and Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond. So there's 3. So yeah, they're in that mix there. I don't think that they could certainly use another like true first line player. And some people would argue that is what Drake Batherson is. He's a good first line player. He's not an elite first line player. The team is much better if they can afford to have him on the second line than the first line. So if they go out and get a really high end guy, that could make sense. But again, they have better defense than most of the teams in the race too, because they have Sanderson and Shabbat, who are both playing phenomenally. So, and Linus Ullmark.
That's true. I will bring you back to Tampa though. Like you said, they have Kucherov, Point, and Gensel. Those guys are great. All of them are producing over a point per game so far this season. They also have Braden Hagel in there, who's producing over a point per game. Victor Hedman is almost a point per game on the defense. Anthony Cirelli, not that far away. He's also almost got 20 goals. Nick Paul is about half a point per game, a little bit more. Nick Paul, I would say, is a secondary piece. Cirelli, a secondary piece. That gives the Lightning 5 guys, right? Ottawa still has only got 3.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, if we want to go into that, then I'm with you there.
Right.
Claude Giroux, borderline secondary piece right now. I mean, his scoring has diminished immensely. Still great defensively. Like he's still a great player for the team. But until Ridley Gregg or Shane Pinto really step up into second line caliber players, it's not. Yeah, they're definitely missing those middle of the lineup pieces.
Yeah, and then with Detroit, yes, right now they probably only have 3, maybe 4 guys, depending on your definition or where you think DeBrincat falls into. But Raymond, Larkin, and Seider, those are their top 3. Who do they have coming up to bolster that? Well, they got Simon Edvinsson. They got Marco Kasper. They got Jonathan Berggren. They got Michael Rasmussen, who, not super young anymore. Nate Danielson, he's coming up. They have a lot of top prospects that are going to be in the NHL or AHL pretty soon. That's not even talking about Axel Sandin Pellikka or Liam Dower-Nilsson or a dozen of these guys, right? They have a really strong farm system that is going to boost things pretty quickly. And the Senators have 1, maybe 2, if you consider that Blake Montgomery is in that level right now. Maybe. Right?
He's doing good in junior, but I wouldn't put him there.
Yeah, right. It's a 1 season kind of breakout. We'll see where that goes.
And same for Stephen Halliday. He could be in that conversation, but I'm not ready to put him in there as an impactful, like, second or third line scoring guy.
Yeah.
Not ready to put him there yet.
He's really inconsistent at the moment. Like, he'll go several games for just like scoring all the time, and then he goes quiet. And he still is working on a defensive side of the game. He's usually on the ice when the Belleville is scored against. It seems anyways. So I think in that comparison, two of the closest teams that the Senators are competing against still have a leg up on them, right? So if the Senators want to be competing for a Stanley Cup within the next 5 years, and I think that is like, that's the maximum window that they have right now. That's, I think, pretty good for where their players are. I don't see them competing much beyond that, especially with how things change so quickly. They're going to need somebody to boost that top six. I don't think you can leave the top six as it is, because it's really two impact guys and a bunch of secondary pieces. And cup winning teams are at least three top impact guys, potentially four in that top six. And the Senators aren't there, and they currently don't have the pieces to get there.
Well, and I think you mentioned that they need to bolster the top six. Right now in the top six, they've got Ridley Gregg and David Perron. Those are not top six players. Might be able to fill in and do fine. Yeah, sure. But yeah, they need to add something. And I think it's got to be a center. And I think Brock Nelson comes to mind, or Dylan Cousins comes to mind, especially if we are going to miss some significant time from these players. And I think Dylan Cousins is extra intriguing now that that there's room in the top six for the rest of the season, or could be room in the top six. But I don't know. You got to figure it out. The cap's going up next year. His $7.1 million would fit pretty well, I think. But you're paying a lot of money for him and Josh Norris, and then you got to pay Shane Pinto after next season. It's complicated, because the toughest thing about, especially with Josh Norris, just because of his salary cap or his cap hit, is that you can't rely on him to stay healthy. And again, this might have nothing to do with his shoulder, but it's not just about his shoulder. It's about just how much time he misses and then how long it takes for him to get back up to speed. I'm more than happy. Like, I want him on the lineup. He is a fantastic player, but can you fit in another true top six player with Josh Norris making $8 million?
I don't think you can, which is why he's probably the trade piece.
But with how he's been playing lately, and especially on the defensive side and on the penalty kill, it's so hard to move him.
I guess, but what is Josh Norris? Like, best case scenario, what is Josh Norris? He's a 30 goal, 60 point guy, right? Like, that's best case scenario. And he's making $8 million for that. You spend another $1.5 million, you get somebody whose minimum is 30 goals, 60 points.
Minimum is complicated because Alex DeBrincat was going to score a minimum of 40 goals in Ottawa.
That's true.
That's like, you never know what you're getting until they're in there and in there for some time. I think DeBrincat finished with 26 goals, which
for him is a bad season.
But for him, it's a bad season. But also for him, it was a bad season. Now it's a normal season.
Yes.
So you move all those pieces. Obviously, it didn't take the Red Wings too much to get to DeBrincat, but look what it cost to bring in. And at the time of the trade, I think most people were happy with the DeBrincat trade when they first got him. It was just a matter of Dorion didn't do his due diligence and make sure he could get a contract in place and whatnot. It's trading for a big player is not always like, yes, their floor at this point in their career might be 30 goals, 60 points, but once they come to a new team, totally different ball game.
It's true. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. But I think when you're acquiring somebody who does have that like extra potential, I don't think we ever assumed Josh Norris was going to be anything more than what he is. I don't think when he was coming up after, being picked in the first round, people thought he was going to be this 90-point, phenom. He was a 30-goal, 60, maybe 70-point guy.
And that's actually more than what he was expected to be when he was drafted. He was going to be a good third-line guy. He was going to be like a Jean-Gabriel Pageau, but with a bit more goal scoring. That was the expectation out of the draft.
So yeah, he's exceeded that, right? He's played above, but arguably he's capped out, right? He's a player who can score 30 goals when healthy. What about a player who can score 40 or 50 when healthy? I'd take a risk on that. And I think if you're going to make room for somebody to come in, Norris has to be the piece going out because of the money.
Oh, 100%. Like, that's the only way it makes sense. Unless you're moving out David Perron, his $4 million helps. And he hasn't been productive to this point, but I don't know.
I don't know if a lot of things Perron yet.
Yeah. So is there any names that you have in mind that the Senators should target? Like, do you think that they should go for Pettersson, or do you think that they should go for Cousins, or do you think? They have the Pettersson trifecta right now. I don't think they're moving any of them in Vancouver, but I don't know. Is there any names coming to mind for you?
Well, I was actually looking at Pettersson. I think like he is on the risky side, but he is locked up for a while. So you don't have that risk of needing to renegotiate a contract. He is one of the highest paid forwards in the NHL right now, making just a hair over $9 million annually.
11.6.
What? Really?
Pettersson makes 11.6 million.
What stats did I find then? 8 years, 92 million, right?
Yeah, 8 years, 92.8.
Yeah, my math is bad. Yikes. Thank you.
Yeah, 11.6.
Yeah, I did it backwards. If anyone understands that, then you also have dyslexia. But okay. So a touch over 11. That's a lot, obviously. But he's also somebody who, a bad season is 30 goals, 60 points. Right?
It's a really bad season for Pettersson.
That's a really bad season for Pettersson. That's what you're getting with Norris.
Yeah.
So that's a massive upgrade on him. You throw in a couple extra pieces. And I don't think Vancouver is in a great position right now to be demanding the world for Pettersson. He's not having a good season this year.
I was just looking at that. 30 goals, 60 points would be a really good year for him this year.
Yes. Yeah, he's doing very poorly this year.
He's on pace for 18 goals and 61 points.
No, something's gone very wrong in Vancouver. And I don't know if Vancouver's super happy with their return from the JT Miller trade.
Like, I wouldn't be.
It's fine, but that's a guy who has 100 points last season, right? And they got a first-round pick, which they traded already. They got a guy who can maybe play second-line center. And they got a promising defenseman, but right now it's a bag of magic beans. You're not sure if he's going to pan out. Things look really good with him, Victor Mancini, and he's got that right shot. He's got a lot of skill, and that's always good to have on your back end. But what is that right now for the Canucks? It's currently nothing, right? He's not contributing on their NHL team to help them win. So I think they want to maybe explore, and they have been exploring moving Pettersson. They were looking to move him to Carolina. Would Ottawa be a potential place that he could go? He could maybe mix well with someone like Tim Stützle. I think they play similar styles, not exactly the same, but I don't think it would clash anyways. the Senators don't have a really intense, passionate guy like Miller, unless you think Tkachuk is like that. But I've never put those two guys in the same boat.
He is on the ice, but once you get in the locker room, he seems like a big teddy bear.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I don't think Miller ever could turn it off, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good, tight-knit group that has a lot less pressure than either Vancouver or Miller had with him. I think that could help Pettersson relax. And I think when a player like that is relaxed, they play a lot better. And all of a sudden you've got a 90 to 100 point player who could bounce around between first and second line, right? I think that's too good to not explore. And definitely the Senators need to kick some tires and see if there is a possibility to acquire him. Now, if Vancouver's asking for like 3 first-round picks, like tell him to touch grass. That's not happening. Like nobody's going to pay for that, especially this season. And it's not guaranteed that Miller was the problem, right?
Yeah.
We can assume it is, but we weren't in the dressing room. We don't know what happened. I don't know. I think this is the perfect time to try and wrestle him away from Vancouver because he probably is at his cheapest value he's ever going to be. I think the fans have kind of gotten annoyed with some of his antics. I think the Canucks are looking to recoup some assets. I think that could work out in the Senators' favor. I don't think they need to acquire him. I think there's other options. But for me, that's, I think, the most interesting option that is available right now.
Yeah, and I think, not going to look too far into it, but you look at Elias Pettersson's first 4 seasons. He had 66 points, 66 points again, 21 points in only 26 games, then 68 points. So he was a high 60s point guy. All 4 of those seasons were under Travis Green. And then his next season, without Travis Green, he had 102 points. So as part of that just really good development in his game, probably. Could part of it also be how he played under Travis Green? Probably. So that's just a question that Steve Staios has to say to, has to talk to Travis Green about. Like, do you like this guy? Did you like him playing for you? Why was he capping out at 68 points under you, and then the next season had 102?
That's a great question. Yeah. Hopefully Green would give a brutally honest answer that would help them know what to do with that.
Yeah. So, all right, moving on. As we move closer to the deadline, we'll dive deeper into more real targets and who we think, and maybe some mock trades and all that stuff. But right now, we're just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Ryan Hartman suspended for 10 games for roughing Tim Stützle. So if you missed it, I don't know if Ryan Hartman kind of liked what he's seeing from Jake Paul or Logan Paul and WWE and that was his audition or something, but elbow, back of the head, drives it right into the ice right off a face-off. 100% intentional. He's done it before with Cole Perfetti. It was with a high stick, but intentional off the face-off. He's been suspended 4 times in the past few years already, been fined another 3 times. It's nothing new for Ryan Hartman, and he was all over the ice. He was all over the score, not the score sheet because he didn't get a point, but he was all over the box score for the game against the Minnesota Wild where Ottawa won 6-0. He got an embellishment penalty right before that, and then he comes out and to end the period, he does that. And Tim Stützle needed, it looked like 5 or 6 stitches on his eyebrow. Do you like the suspension? Were you surprised that it was this much? Do you think it should have been more? What are your thoughts on it?
10 games was surprising. The last double-digit suspension was Tom Wilson's.
It was Tim Stützle, or it was Shane Pinto. But
okay,
on ice play, it was Tom Wilson.
For on-ice activities, the last double-digit suspension was Tom Wilson, right? Yeah, it's
in 2018, so 7 years ago.
Yeah, 2018 was 7 years ago already. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
time sucks. I'm done with it. So yeah, I don't think 10 games makes a ton of sense. It was 100% intentional. I definitely believe that. I have seen the clip for this one. The history definitely drove up the number of games. I was definitely expecting like 5 to 8. That seems to be kind of the normal suspension level. It kind of feels like the NHL might be punishing somebody that they know that they can punish.
Yeah, they're going to get away with it. And not get away with it. I mean, he deserves it. Look what he did to Tim Stützle. But again, I'm also a big advocate that the injury or potential injury should have a big impact. It shouldn't be the deciding factor, and it shouldn't be like as long as this guy's out, that's how long you're suspended. I don't think that would ever work or should be tried. But I think that the fact that Tim Stützle got a couple stitches and was back out for the third period, I think that should have a factor. But I'm glad that he got as long as he did. I was quite surprised as well. I was thinking like 4 to 6.
Yeah, I'm definitely not opposed to the 10 games with his history of doing stuff like this. Like specifically, he's done it before, kind of. That's a player who can't control himself. He gets too lost in the moment, and then he kind of, to me, that's almost like red mist kind of stuff. Like, I don't think a player ever enters a game deciding I am going to hurt somebody, but I think you get lost in the moment thinking the only way we're getting out of this is if I take this guy out. I've played with some fantastic human beings who are just awful, awful people on the ice because they can't turn it off.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what's happening to Hartman. And I wonder if the NHL is, I don't want to give them too much credit because I don't think the NHL...
It'll go right to their heads.
Yeah. Of course, they'll listen to me because I have such a very big voice. But anyways, I think the NHL did a good thing here with the heavy suspension. Like, this is trying to send a message. Is Hartman a big impact player? Would the same thing have been handed out to someone else?
I don't think so. I mean, if someone else had the history that he does, I think so. But just for like a first time or second time offender, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, if Nathan McKinnon had all those suspensions that Hartman had and then did that, I think he does get the 10 games or whatever Hartman was going to get. I mean, like I said, I thought it was going to be like 4 to 6, and I think that's what most people would expect. But I think that like McKinnon would get the same treatment.
You'd hope so.
I would hope so.
You'd hope so, but it still feels like there is two scales that players are judged on.
Connor McDavid and Ian Cole just got the same suspension for the same play.
That is true. Maybe we're seeing a little bit of improvement. I don't know. When it comes to suspensions and the NHL, I don't trust anything. And to see this is like as a good example, I'm like, okay, where's the problem here? Because there is one. There has to be a problem. The NHL doesn't get it right.
Oh yeah, no, there's always something wrong with what they do. And what if there isn't? There still is.
Yeah. So I don't know.
But I will give props to George Peros on this. He made the right call.
Yes. Good for George.
So Jake Sanderson, we already talked about him a little bit, but he is back to absolutely dominating the field. He's been one of the best defensemen in the league since January 1st. He started the year as one of the best defensemen in the league, and then Artem Zub got hurt, and he got stuck with Travis Hamonic. So this isn't going to be a Travis Hamonic pile-on show, I promise. But was Travis Hamonic what was bringing him down? Was it the Hamonic effect, or was it just kind of like a mid-season slump, and now he's just kind of back to where he should be? What are your thoughts on Sanderson's, I guess, whole season so far?
It's probably a little bit of both, I'd think. He doesn't mix well with Hamonic. I think we've seen that in the past. The two guys
let's try it again.
Yeah, right? Let's see if it works a fifth time. What's the definition of madness again? Anyway, the whole team was rough at the beginning of January here. Like, nobody could score. The puck movement wasn't where it should have been. The defense was good, at least. Everyone was playing pretty solidly defense. But we weren't seeing any real good scoring chances. It just wasn't happening. And I started thinking about some depth pieces that the Senators could add, because something had to change. And then all of a sudden it did. And they were scoring again, which is great. So maybe it just was that coming out of the Christmas break, everyone's still a little bit slow. They needed to get back up to speed, and by February now they're rolling.
Yeah, I kind of think that's where it is too. I mean, he doesn't play well with Hamonic. That's, I think, number one factor is getting him away from Travis Hamonic. Whether it's going to be Nick Jensen or Artem Zub, I think Thomas Chabot has done a better job of playing with below average players, which I don't think is a hot take to call Travis Hamonic below average, or anybody else other than Dylan DeMello that Thomas Chabot has played with. Chabot's just not had a good defense partner his whole career. So I think that Chabot learned how to play with somebody that can't pull their weight as well as he can. Sanderson hasn't learned that yet. Sanderson has been with Zub or Hamonic, and it does not work with Hamonic. It has worked with Zub.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's the biggest thing for me.
More than happy to keep Sanderson with Zub. Those guys click really well. It's on a smaller scale, it's like a Cale Makar, Devin Taves kind of situation. They make each other better.
Yeah, for sure. So if Quinn Hughes is pulled from the Four Nations, he's dealing with a lower body injury. I was talking to Matthew today, our producer and a Canucks writer, and he said that it's just bumps. It sounds like it's just bumps and bruises, and his agent said that it's probably not going to affect the Four Nations. If he is pulled from the Four Nations, is there an argument for anybody else to go in above Jake Sanderson?
Who would go above Jake Sanderson?
Let's see. Some of the defensemen that did not make it. John Carlson.
He's having a great season.
He is having a good season. Neil Pionk is having a good season.
Yeah, all the Jets are. They're a wagon.
Seth Jones and Shane Gostisbehere, and then Ryan McDonough.
Yeah, fine.
So does Sanderson? I would classify it as a 3-horse race there: Sanderson, Carlson, or Pionk.
Well, let's see here. I'm curious, because how many points does Sanderson have right now? Like, how is he as an offensive defenseman?
34 in 52 games.
That's pretty good. That is 1 point behind Pionk. And without disparaging anybody, I think we can all accept that the Senators are a weaker team than the Jets.
And Sanderson is much better defensively than Pionk.
Yes. So I think we can say
Pionk
that Sanderson
giveth and Pionk taketh away.
Yes. I think we can say Sanderson would be above him, right?
Yeah.
So John Carlson only has 32 points in 52 games. He's been doing really well on a very strong Capitals team. Looking at that, I mean, yes, Carlson is a right shot, which is good, as is Pionk. But isn't Quinn Hughes a left shot?
Yeah.
I don't know. So. I think you might be onto something then. I think the best argument, if they're trying to keep good pairings, would be to have Jake Sanderson take Quinn Hughes' place, if that were the case. I think the other two guys are good. I think also that Sanderson has been better without as much support as the other guys.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
look
good
at
person to have.
I look at the U.S. roster, and for the defensemen, I mean, you got some really good players there, and I'm just trying to see. Okay, so Brock Faber, there's a good argument for Sanderson to have been in there over Faber. I think they're pretty well neck and neck, and it's just kind of a preference thing. But it's Bill Guerin running the team, so obviously it's going to be Faber.
Mhm.
And then Adam Fox, Noah Hannafin, Charlie McAvoy, Jacob Slavin, and Zach Werenski all have very, very good defensive abilities, which is a huge thing on that team. So I don't even think they care who goes with who. All of those defensemen are very good defensively. So it's I think Sanderson would fit in really well. He's in I would say the median for most of those defensemen is about the 50 to 60 points. That's like a good season for all of them. Obviously, Zach Werenski is going to crush that this year, and that's obviously not including Quinn Hughes, but all of those guys are, except for maybe Jacob Slavin, and well, I guess Adam Fox too. He's a superstar, but like 50 to 60 points is a good year for most of those defensemen, but they also are better defensively than offensively. So I think he would fit in really well. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, it'd be great to see him with Brady. That'd be awesome.
That would be a lot of fun. All right, last question for the show. Who wins in a playoff series? The Ottawa Senators or the Toronto Maple Leafs? So right now, the Senators are third in the Atlantic, just 2 points behind the Maple Leafs. Maple Leafs are currently winning against the Calgary Flames, but I don't think anybody would be disappointed to finish third in the Atlantic. It's looking like there's a really good chance. I mean, Ottawa's only 2 points ahead of Boston and Tampa and 3 points ahead of Detroit. Montreal has fallen out of the race significantly. Haha. Sorry. But right now, there's a good chance that it's Toronto-Ottawa in the first round. Probably I'd say a 40% chance that they're a first-round matchup at this point. Who wins that series? Toronto has been fighting to get over the hump. I mean, they beat Tampa a few years ago, but they've been really fighting to get over that hump. Toronto doesn't play very well against the Senators. The Senators play very well against Toronto, whichever way you want to look at it. Do the Senators have a chance at a 7-game series against the Maple Leafs?
Oh, I think 100% they do. They like Tim Stützle is a bit of a Leafs killer, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like
there's a lot of Leaf killers on the Senators.
Yeah.
Ridley Gregg.
Yes. Yeah. There's some bad blood, and I'm, honestly, no matter how the series goes, I'm just happy that we're back in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, 100%.
With the Battle of Ontario, like that's where we're headed. This is Yashin versus Sundin. This is Matthews versus Stützle, or Matthews versus Tkachuk. It's pretty exciting to see that back. In a 7-game series, well, it's really tough to say. I think it would go 7, most likely. They are quite evenly matched when they play against each other. The Leafs have the bigger stars, but the Senators just know how to beat the Leafs, like no matter what. The 2 games they've played this season, one of them they were without one of their big stars, Tavares. So the last one they played, Tavares wasn't in the lineup. The Senators beat them 2-1, and that was Joseph Woll in their starting position, and he did well. He had a .913 save percentage. Senators still managed to get enough goals by him, and only 23 shots too. They had less shots. Before that, in November, the Leafs were without Matthews. So they had Tavares. They didn't have Matthews. And I believe Stolars was starting at that point, and he was doing fantastic at that time. He made 38 saves, and the Senators still won 3-0. And the Senators weren't missing anybody big on their lineup. The one I guess you could mention is most recently they were without Ullmark.
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty even match. The Senators haven't faced the core four so far this season.
And you think they would face all four of them in the playoffs? They all disappeared.
Yeah, well, best case scenario, you'd want everybody healthy.
Yeah.
And I could see the Leafs resting up people if that's the position that they're in, That seems like a Leaf thing to do. I think it'd be a good series no matter what the result. And
I think it would be great.
Yeah, like the Senators, if they can get into a matchup against the Leafs, that's going to be, I think, where they should be. I don't expect them to win a round this year, but I do expect them to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like Florida. Florida is going to destroy Ottawa. Tampa would destroy Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
Boston, I think Ottawa wins. Washington, Carolina, New Jersey, they all destroy Ottawa.
Oh, yeah.
Toronto is the only team that I would give Ottawa a fighting chance against. I mean, I think Ottawa's going to win 1 or 2 games in any of those series. Like they're not just going to get swept. I don't think if they make the playoffs, they would fight for at least one win. Again, no expectation that they win a round this year. Just getting into the playoffs is the first step. But Toronto's like the only team that they could realistically play against that I think they have a chance against.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll wrap things up for today. It's been a pretty fun episode, even after a loss. So, Dayton, thanks for joining as usual. And everybody, thanks for coming to check out the episode. And make sure to check out the hockeywriters.com. Check out all the latest Senators content, as well as the Substack post as well. So, all that content, we're going to have a bunch of trade deadline stuff for you. And then after that, we're right into the draft. So, make sure to check out all the content from the Hockey Writers, and we will see you next time.